With the Scream 7 trailer hinting at many things, which hints suggest that Stu Macher is alive.
This is gonna be fun.
Welcome to another Scream Week video where I am dedicating my channel to Scream 7 for an entire week. My name is Em, aka Horror, and in today's video I will be discussing the signs in the Scream 7 trailer which point to the possible survival of Stu Macher. If you know me, you will know that I am not the biggest fan of Stu being alive. Now don't get me wrong, I love Stu and he is my second favourite killer after Billy. However, I have concerns that him being alive would ruin the character himself. I do also feel like it could possibly ruin the story that we have grown to know and love, and it wouldn't really fit in with what Scream actually is. However, I do also understand that people do have differences of opinion, and that is absolutely fine. Of course, if they do it right and make it make sense, I would welcome it with open arms. Although I am not a fan of his survival, after watching the Scream 7 trailer numerous times, there are signs that have made me think, and I can also see why people are convinced that he is behind it all. So what signs am I talking about? The first clear sign comes at the very beginning of the trailer. Whoever is behind the Ghostface mask this time has a clear connection to what happened in Woodsboro at the Macher house. We see Ghostface attack a woman after she visits with her partner, and then later on we see the Macher house burning to the ground with Ghostface lighting the match. It does appear that Ghostface seems to know his way around the house due to the attack sequence we can piece together, and to burn such an iconic place down seems very personal. Yes, it could be someone who just wants the house to be destroyed due to the stigma, but this, along with other clues we hear throughout the trailer, has made me think that the link is 100% Stu related. Another possibility is that it could be a relation to Stu, possibly Leslie Macher, as this has been theorised now for a long time. They could be wanting to get rid of evidence that Stu left behind, which leads to a bigger picture than what happened in 1996 and something that was not found by the Freeman family when they lived there. I do just want to point out that Stu Macher was not the only Ghostface killer to live here. We also had Amber Freeman, who was one of the Ghostface killers in 2022. So if there is evidence there, there is a big chance that she knew about it and also covered this up. She mentioned that she was in a dreaded community, and this very well could have been run by Stu Macher. He could have let her know about the evidence and she could have easily covered it up as well, concealing what had happened. I don't, however, believe that the relevance of the Macher house in Scream 7 is a direct connection to Amber. Either way, to carry out an arson on the property does feel very meaningful. We also hear a conversation between Sidney and Ghostface on the phone. In this conversation, Ghostface mentions the place Sidney is living and how it reminds them of where they both grew up. So we know that there is a link to Woodsboro through the killer. I say that, but it could also be someone using this to get into Sidney's head. There is a high possibility that Ghostface is using AI and voices of the past, so that line could just be a way to make Sidney feel more vulnerable. That being said, I don't think this is 100% the case. Yes, I do think AI holds a place in the movie, but I also think that the connection to Woodsboro is very real. So who could it be that is behind the phone call? Well, with 3 movies out of the 6 so far being held in Woodsboro, there are many faces we have seen before who could fit this, or it could be someone we have not yet seen. For this to be as impactful on the audience as it is to Sidney, however, we would need to see the links from the past that is known to us as well. It can't just be a random person from down the street who knew Sidney. For a good story, a link to someone we also know is very much needed. Billy, Jill, and Stu would be the most impactful for this to work, but with the other signs we see in the movie, a link to Stu is what stands out. It's not just a link to Woodsboro that could possibly point to Stu being alive though. If you look at the persona of Ghostface, there are characteristics which only feel too familiar. For a start, this scene where Ghostface jumps from the loft hatch has a very noticeable stance. We saw Ghostface hold themselves in a very similar way when they were in the hospital in Scream 5. Yes, Amber did say she was the one who killed Dewey and carried out the attack, but there are many fans who do not buy this and who think that there was an additional Ghostface involved. In fact, if you look at all of the Scream movies, there is a feeling that another Ghostface may have been in the background. Some kills don't add up to the people taking ownership of them, and some scenarios don't fully make sense without another possible person's involvement. So if we stick to this and theorise that there was an additional killer, we could point this to being Stu. The reason I say this is because every spree has had a personal theme behind the motives. The only ghost faces I would say that do not fall within this completely are Jason and Greg, who are just copycat weirdos obsessed with the killings and stab movies, as their roles were very, very small and not something behind the main motives. We can just write them off as either being idiots or part of a Ghostface cult who become reckless and were taken out by Detective Bailey for this reason. Another characteristic that we see Ghostface have in the trailer is in the scene where Ghostface is stabbing through the walls at Sidney and Tatum. One thing that Ghostface does with his knife has only been seen once before, correct me if I am wrong, where we saw this in the original. I am of course talking about the knife tap. Now, depending on who you believe was the Ghostface outside of the Macher house chasing Sidney will depend on the reliability of this theory. There are theories supporting both Billy and Stu being the Ghostface doing this in the original, and both theories have great substance to back it up. However, the knife tap is something very eerie, and this was a playful part of Ghostface's cat and mouse persona in 1996. We do see both Billy and Stu be playful in their own ways, but Stu's playfulness is more physical, which was a central part of his character. So is this knife tap something indicating Stu is behind the mask? Quite possibly. The last thing I will be speaking about in this video is Stu's line at the end of the trailer, where we clearly hear his voice saying, "This is gonna be fun." We heard him say it was fun in a very similar tone when him and Billy had revealed themselves, so this line is very Stu. My big point on this line, however, is that whilst we as an audience know this as being a Stu line, only a few people in the Scream universe would know that he had said this. It was a line said in front of Billy and Sidney, with Neil in the pantry and possibly Gail in the hallway. There was also Randy in the hallway, who may or may not have been conscious at the time. So how would Ghostface know that this line would be effective? How would they know the tone in which Stu said this? There is of course Gail's camera footage which may have picked this up, however the technology of the 90s would not have been so clear. So the only way that Ghostface could possibly know this line would be if they were there, pointing to this possibly not being a line said by AI in Scream 7, but by Stu himself. Unless, of course, the additional Ghostface I spoke about earlier has always been in the background. Nothing is guaranteed, and of course these are all just theories, but the clues that point to it being Stu, or at least it being linked to him, are very apparent, and it could change the whole course of the franchise. It could also mean that we are nearing the end of Sidney-centric stories. So as always, what do you guys think? Are there any clues pointing to Stu that I have missed? Let me know down in the comments section. If you have enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and switch on that notifications button, as I will be uploading more content like this. Thank you so much for watching. You can check out my other content here. With that being said, I will see you in the next video.